How's it going, my peeps? It is now time for the SummerSlam 2014 results/highlights and review video. I'll go over the results, some of the highlights in my opinion, and give you guys my thoughts, my review on the show. So, of course, it starts off with the kickoff. The panel this time was Renee Young, Booker T, Alex Riley, and special guest, Hall of Famer Ric Flair. Now, they start off by hyping some of the matches, going over the matches they want to see the most, and They show a video package for Brie versus Stephanie, and then they move on to the kickoff match, RVD versus Cesaro, which ended up being a really cool matchup. And one of the cooler spots in the match was Cesaro tried to copy Rob Van Dam's Rolling Thunder. He did it successfully, except he changed it up a bit, where at the end there, instead of RVD's flipping senton, he turned it into a double stomp. Now, towards the end, RVD was trying to go for the 5-star frog splash. Cesaro, trying to stop him, goes after him. He tries to interrupt him with a top rope, superplex, but RVD pushes him off. But then Cesaro comes back towards the turnbuckle, uppercuts RVD. Once again, RVD pushes him off. Cesaro then comes back with another uppercut, and eventually, Rob Van Dam goes for the jump, but Cesaro catches him in midair with the uppercut, and then he goes for the cover, and at that point I'm thinking, oh, we might actually see Cesaro win this match, because, he's been on a losing streak. But no, RVD kicks out, and a few moments afterwards, RVD lands a kick on Cesaro and follows it up with a 5-star frog splash, covers him, and gets the 3 counts. So then the rest of the pre-show, they show, hype up the matches. Once again, they show the Tortino's contest winner. He comes out and talks on the panel, and then after that, they show a video package for Brock versus Cena, and that was pretty much it for the pre-show, or the kickoff. Hogan then kicks off SummerSlam. Pretty much he promotes the WWE Network, saying that the people that are watching SummerSlam right now, they're watching it on the network for only $9.99, and the crowd says it with him. And pretty much he ends it by saying, "What you gonna do, brother, when SummerSlam, the WWE Network, and Hulk Hogan run wild on you?" And then his music hits, and then they show a cool video package for SummerSlam. So then the matchup that kicked off the show was the Intercontinental Championship match, The Miz versus Dolph Ziggler. Before the match, The Miz has a microphone. He says he has something that everybody wishes they had, and that is the Moneymaker. He points to his face. And then he says, tonight, he's gonna turn Dolph Ziggler, the WWE superstar, into WWE's version of the LA Lakers. So then afterwards, Ziggler comes out for the match, and in the very beginning of the match, or close to the beginning, Ziggler hit the super kick on The Miz. And he covered him, Miz kicked out at 2.5. It was a very close count, but he kicks out, and then he gets out of the ring, grabs the championship, and he's trying to get away, but Ziggler stops him with a baseball slide from the outside of the ring from the inside to the outside of the ring. And then the highlight of the match was Ziggler, after being put in the figure 4 and escaping, he goes for the Fame-Acer on The Miz, and it looked like he hit the Fame-Acer, but The Miz got his head from under Ziggler's, leg just in time, right in time to, not suffer the Fame-Acer. And right after, he turns it into the skull-crushing finale, covers him, but Dolph actually kicks out of the skull-crushing finale. That was a big surprise in the match. And then shortly after, Ziggler hits the zigzag, and I'm wondering if, The Miz kicks out or not, because, Ziggler kicked out of the skull-crushing finale, but no, Ziggler gets the 3 count and wins the Intercontinental Championship. So that was pretty cool, and it was an unexpected win there. And afterwards, they have Paige versus AJ Lee for the Divas Championship. And in this match, one of the highlights of the match was Paige had AJ in the electric chair position on the outside of the ring. And she dropped Paige face first onto the barricade. So instead of dropping, her the usual electric chair position way, she drops her face first onto the barricade. And even towards the beginning of the match, AJ tore off one of Paige's hair extensions. But anyways, the ending of the match takes place when AJ has the Black Widow locked in, but Paige actually counters it into the Cradle DDT, hits it, covers AJ, and wins the Divas Championship. So another title win. Right after that, I see title change. So, after that, it is time for the flag match. Rusev versus Jack Swagger, and Justin Roberts announces that the winner of the match will get their flag raised up above the ring. So, pretty much confirming that it is, a regular match, pretty much. It's not, the type of flag match that Ted DiBiase and Hunico had on an episode of SmackDown where you have to go ahead and grab the flag to win. It's basically a normal matchup that's won by pinfall or submission, but they get the flag raised up above the ring. Before the match even starts, when Swagger was waving his flag in the ring, Rusev attacks him, but Swagger eventually turns around and he locks in the Patriot Lock. Eventually, because of the referee, telling Swagger to stop, he lets go. And then, Rusev takes a bit of time to recover, and then they start the match, and right away, Swagger goes after Rusev's leg. And then a bit later on in the match, Rusev starts dominating until Jack Swagger pulls off a belly-to-belly suplex. And, in this match, I love the selling from Rusev. I noticed that Rusev is really good at just selling moves and just selling in general. I thought he sold really well in his, I think it was his second match against Big E, when Big E hit that spear through the ropes, and here he was really selling the leg, especially when he was locking in the Accolade. First time around, because throughout the match, Swagger was working on Rusev's leg, so when Lana tells Rusev to crush and, lock in the Accolade, he locks it in, but at the same time, he's really selling his leg. So what he does after getting out of the Patriot Lock and, he wants to lock in the Accolade, he rests the leg that Swagger was working on the mat. So he doesn't stand on it during the Accolade. He only stands on one leg, and he's putting it on, Swagger. But Swagger, he powers out of it, and then Swagger locks in the Patriot Lock once again. But this time around, Rusev turns it around. He actually turns around and starts kicking Swagger in his side, and then he gets up, and because of the kicks to Swagger has to let go, or he can't keep it on, and then Rusev follows it up with a spinning wheel kick, and then follows that up with a running splash, and then follows it up with the Accolade. This time he actually stands on both legs, and Rusev he has it on for a while, and Swagger doesn't tap out, but he does pass out, and so the referee calls it, and he calls Rusev the winner of the match due to, Swagger passing out. So it was a good way of, just keeping Swagger looking strong, but at the same time giving the win to Rusev. Once I saw that it was going to be, a regular matchup, not the flag match where they have to grab the flag to win, I was like, alright, Rusev's winning this, but I thought this was a really good way to keep Swagger looking strong, because instead of tapping out, he passed out. He didn't want to tap out. And then after the match, they rose up the Russian flag, and also they played the Russian national anthem. So after that, they then showed a video package for the upcoming match, which was the Lumberjack match between Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins. It was a pretty cool video package. So then after they showed that, of course, it's time for the matchup, and what a match it was. I know I said in my prediction game video for Ambrose versus Rollins, I said, I'd never seen really a good lumberjack match or a great lumberjack match. This was a great lumberjack match. In fact, I would go as far as to say this was probably the best lumberjack match I've ever seen. It was entertaining. The lumberjacks, they got involved a lot, and also Ambrose and Rollins, despite the lumberjacks, they fought in the crowd. They got past the lumberjacks. Ambrose, even at some points, he suplexed Rollins from inside of the ring to the outside onto the Lumberjacks, and then they started fighting it out on the outside. Lumberjacks were trying to grab them, put him back in the ring, but they keep fighting, and then Ambrose manages to backdrop Rollins over the barricade into the crowd, and then the Lumberjacks grab Ambrose and they put him back in the ring, and Ambrose, in response to that, he from inside of the ring hits a suicide dive on the Lumberjacks, and then he gets up on the announcer's table. He runs over on the announcer's table and jumps on top of Rollins and also Kofi Kingston, over the barricade. And then Ambrose and Rollins keep fighting it out in the crowd, trading punches, and then it looked like Ambrose, they climb up the stairs, so they're really high up in the crowd now, and it looked like Ambrose was going to go for Dirty Deed, but Seth Rollins counters it, and it looked like Rollins was going to go for a suplex, but then Kane comes out, and he yells at the Lumberjacks, tells them to go after Ambrose and Rollins, go get them. So they do, they get in the crowd, go after them. The heels go ahead and grab Ambrose and drag him back in the ring, or, they go in the direction of the ring. And meanwhile, Seth Rollins, he tries to just leave, to just get away. So he goes on the other side, and he's trying to just get out of there, leave the arena, leave the match. But the Usos, Goldust, Stardust, and Big E all stop him in his tracks. They grab him, and then the other Lumberjacks join in, and they'll grab Seth Rollins and put him up above their heads, and then they walk with him towards, ringside, towards the ring. And when they get close to ringside, Ambrose climbs up the top turnbuckle, and he jumps on top of Rollins and all the other Lumberjacks, taking them all out. And then he puts Rollins back in the ring. And then shortly after, Rollins hits him with an enziguri. But Ambrose comes bouncing back off the ropes and hits a clothesline. And then he follows that up with the curb stomp. That's right, he copies Seth Rollins' finisher. He actually hits the curb stomp. And at that point, I'm thinking he goes for the cover, wins the match. But Kane comes back in and he uppercuts Ambrose. And then Goldust, he comes in. He gets face to face with Kane. Kane also uppercuts Goldust. And that's when Stardust comes in, and then all the rest of the Lumberjacks, they get in the ring. They all start fighting it out. They eventually all get thrown out. The two last remaining Lumberjacks in the ring end up being Luke Harper and Eric Rowan, and they decide to go after Dean Ambrose. Luke Harper goes first. Dean Ambrose ducks, and he, grabs the ropes, pulls them down, so Luke Harper gets sent to the outside. And Eric Rowan charges Ambrose as well, but Ambrose gets out of the way and he clotheslines Eric Rowan out of the ring. Keep in mind, now he's got his back turned to Seth Rollins, so Rollins comes back in the ring with the briefcase. Ambrose turns around, he gets hit right in the head with the Money in the Bank briefcase, and then Rollins covers him, gets the 3 count, and wins the Lumberjack match. A great Lumberjack match. So, after that, it was time for Bray Wyatt versus Chris Jericho. And what I thought was really cool here is during Chris Jericho's entrance, they brought back the countdown. That's right, it's no longer just break the walls down, or at least, it wasn't for SummerSlam. They actually had the old countdown, it was the same sound and everything, and actually Jericho also came out with a brand new style jacket. It's the same, well, it's not the same, but it's another jacket that lights up, but the lights are, placed in a different position, and it's a different jacket. But anyways, Bray and Jericho end up having a good matchup, and once again, Jericho hit the codebreaker out of nowhere when Bray went for the clothesline, but Jericho ducked and he followed it up with the codebreaker. He then goes for the cover, and Bray Wyatt was rolling towards the ropes, but Jericho, when he flipped him over, away from the ropes, but he was still kind of close to the ropes enough to get his foot under the rope. But at the same time, he didn't just put his foot under the rope, but he also kicked out. So you could see it as Bray kicking out or Bray surviving by putting his foot under the rope. Either way, he did both. And shortly after, Bray gets out of the ring and Jericho follows up. He tries to do a baseball slide, but Bray gets out of the way. Jericho slides to the outside of the ring. Then on the outside, Bray hits Jericho with a thumb to the throat, and he follows that up with Sister Abigail onto the barricade. And then just a few moments afterwards, he puts Jericho back in the ring and hits another Sister Abigail inside the ring, and then wins the match after covering Jericho. So Bray wins the second match, and then afterwards, Bray actually sings "He's Got the Whole World in His Hands." Following that, it is time for Stephanie McMahon versus Brie Bella, and of course they show a video package first. And as far as the match goes, it was mostly dominated by Stephanie McMahon. And also, in the beginning of the match, Nikki Bella and Triple H weren't present. They weren't at ringside, so it was just Brie and Stephanie. And Stephanie, like I said, she dominated most of the matchup. In the beginning, she was mostly focusing on Brie in the corner, but she also pulled off, some wrestling moves. She pulled off a DDT, which Brie kicked out of. She also did, Mr. Perfect's move, the rolling neck slap, rolling neck snap, not slap. And eventually, Brie Bella, gets some momentum, and she hits a missile drop kick from the top turnbuckle, which Stephanie kicked out of. And also, Brie Bella at some point went for the suicide dive, but Stephanie she grabbed Brie Bella's head and shoved her neck onto the ropes. And Anyways, at some point, Bree's in control, and then Triple H comes running down the ramp, and he starts pointing at Bree, yelling, and then Nikki also comes running down the ramp, and because of that distraction, it allows Stephanie McMahon to get up, and once Bree turns around, Stephanie sets her up for the pedigree, but Bree gets out of it, and then she puts on the yes lock, but Triple H, he grabs the referee by the leg and basically pulls him out of the ring. So when Bree sees that, she bounces off the ropes and hits Triple H with a baseball slide, taking him down, and then she gets out of the ring and does the yes chant right above Triple H. In the meanwhile, Stephanie's still in the ring and she's crawling towards the other side of the ring, and Nikki Bella gets in the ring right in front of Stephanie, because the referee, keep in mind, the referee's still down, so she gets in the ring, she's in front of Stephanie, and then Brie Bella also gets in the ring, so Stephanie's cornered, she's got Brie Bella on one side and Nikki Bella on the other side, and then it looks like, you know, they're gonna attack Stephanie or something, but Nikki Bella then, and this, I saw this coming when, you know, they cornered Steph. Nikki Bella grabs Steph by the arm, and she pulls her away, and hits Brie Bella with an elbow to the face, and then she gets out of the ring. Stephanie then gets the smirk, and she gets up, hits the pedigree on Brie Bella, and covers her for the win. So Stephanie McMahon beats Brie Bella when Nikki Bella turns on her sister. I actually thought the heel turn for Nikki would happen, you know, later on towards WrestleMania, something like that. But looks like I was wrong. And then on top of that, after the match was over, Stephanie McMahon and Triple H kiss, standing above Brie Bella, while Nikki Bella is on the outside, looking like she had that expression that, you know, she maybe didn't want to do that, or was, you know, forced to do it or something like that. She wasn't celebrating with Triple H and Brie. So anyways, after that, it was time for Roman Reigns versus Randy Orton, and this match had some cool counters. First counter was after Reigns had hit the Superman punch, he went for the spear, and Randy countered that spear very nicely into a power slam. I heard back in the house show where Reigns got the stitches above his eye in that steel cage match, they tried that same spot, except they both bumped heads, and that's how Reigns got the stitches, except this time it went smoothly, and Randy did counter the spear perfectly into a power slam. And then another counter was Randy went for the RKO on Reigns. Reigns pushed him off, and this was one of the coolest counters. Not Reigns pushing Randy off, but so he pushes Randy off, and then he bounces off the ropes. He goes for what I thought was going to be a spear, but he jumps up, so he's going for the Superman punch, and Randy jumps up too, and he hits an RKO in midair, countering the Superman punch. The attempt at the Superman punch into the RKO, it was great. And I thought the match was over right there. I actually thought Reigns was going to go for a spear, and that was going to be it. But no, cool spot there. Superman punch into RKO. Orton covers him, and at that point, I'm actually thinking, oh, maybe Randy gets the win here. But in the back of my mind, I was also thinking, maybe Reigns kicks out here. I wouldn't be too surprised. And Reigns did kick out. So, shortly after he kicks out, Randy just, looks at Reigns, and he's wondering what to do. And whenever Randy does that, what's next usually is an attempt at the punt kick. And that was exactly what Randy went for. So Randy prepares for the punt, and so he goes for it, but before he could kick Reigns, Reigns sweeps Randy's leg, making him trip, and then Reigns bounces off the ropes and hits a spear on Randy. It was a cool looking spear. And then he gets the 3 counts and wins the match. So Reigns wins his first singles match on pay-per-view against Randy. And then after that, it is time for the big main event, Brock Lesnar versus John Cena for the championship. They show a video package once again. And then Brock makes his entrance, followed by John Cena. And man, did Brock dominate this matchup. Brock destroyed John Cena. Cena barely got any offense in. I mean, he hit the attitude adjustment. He locked in the STF for a while. He got a couple punches in, but that was it. That was seriously it. You didn't see the 5-knuckle shuffle. You didn't see the back suplex before the 5-knuckle shuffle. The Fame-Acer leg drop from the top rope. You didn't see any of that. Brock just beat up Cena the entire matchup. Like I said, apart from the AA, STF, and a few punches, that was it. Brock hit a bunch of German suplexes in the matchup. Michael Cole on commentary said the number was 16. Brock Lesnar hit 16 German suplexes on Cena. Some of them were, Kurt Angle style German suplexes where he holds on to Cena and hits a bunch in a row. And some were just, German suplex, and then he took a break and then once again grabbed Cena. And he actually grabbed, Cena was like, on the floor, or on the mat, I mean. And Brock just grabbed them, picked them up, and hit another German suplex. And I think the match did not go to the outside at all. It was inside the entire match. And the entire match was just Brock beating up Cena, standing tall, while Cena was, just selling the move and, selling the beating. He was on the mat while Brock was on his feet for 95% of the matchup, or even more than that. And in the very beginning of the match, Brock hit the F5, under a minute in. He hit the F5, covers Cena. Cena kicks out, and once Cena kicks out, Brock looks at Cena. He's like, that was your chance, and now, now I'm gonna kill you. And I mean, he did, beat him up. And also throughout the match, Brock would tell the referee, ask him, if he wants to quit. And at some point, it actually looked like the referee might call the match, because he was the way he was acting, it was like he's about to call the match. But then he decided to ask Cena, and of course, Cena says no. And Paul Heyman even, he would say, ring the bell or call the match. And sometimes I would mistake Paul Heyman saying that for the referee, so I would think the referee said that, but, it was actually Paul Heyman. And when Cena hit the AA and Lesnar kicked out, Lesnar got up by sitting up, mocking The Undertaker. And he was also laughing, and when Cena locked in the STF, Brock turned it around, and then he started punching Cena a bunch of times, and then shortly after, he followed that up with the second F5 of the match, and that was it. He covered Cena, got the 3 counts, won the match, and Brock Lesnar is the new WWE World Heavyweight Champion in, the most, one-sided match for the championship on pay-per-view that I've seen. It was almost like a squash match, but on a main event level, between two main event superstars. Made Brock look like an absolute beast, made Brock look really strong, but also what this did is it made Taker look strong, because Taker put up a really good fight against Brock Lesnar. He hit Brock with a bunch of tombstones, and when you look at Cena hit 1 attitude adjustment, and he couldn't kick out of the second F5. Taker, it took 3 F5s to, take him out and allow Lesnar to break the streak. So, yeah. Now, as far as, my thoughts overall on the show, highlights, man, just the main event, how just Brock, destroyed Cena. I thought it would be, a closer fight. I still thought that Brock would dominate most of the matchup, but not like that. So that was a bit of a surprise there. Also, the lumberjack match between Ambrose and Rollins, that was great. I'm not a big fan of lumberjack matches, but this was the best lumberjack match I'd ever seen. I'm not kidding. I'm serious here. I really enjoyed that lumberjack match, and I think part of it was just, Ambrose and Rollins, or, mostly Ambrose, beating up the lumberjacks and fighting it out on the outside, despite the lumberjacks, and in the crowd too. You wouldn't think, superstars would fight it out in the crowd with lumberjacks around the ring, and it was just a great match. On top of that, the match between AJ and Paige, I thought that one, or this one, was better than their previous one at Battleground. Dolph winning the championship, that's cool. I'm a fan of Dolph, and I was expecting The Miz to win, but I was hoping for Ziggler to win, so I'm happy to see Dolph winning the championship, happy to see Dolph pick up some wins again, and hey, he's in the championship picture now, or the IC championship picture, so, that's a good thing. And also, the kickoff match, Rob Van Dam vs. Cesaro, that was a great match too. And Rusev vs. Swagger, I thought that was also a great match. And I loved the ending, how, they made Swagger look strong in losing. Kind of like, when Bret Hart faced off against Austin and he was in the sharpshooter for a while, but instead of tapping out, he passed out. And I thought this, Swagger passing out instead of tapping out to the accolade, thought this definitely, separated him from, the other superstars that faced off against Rusev. They all tapped out, but Swagger, he refused to tap out. Instead, he passed out and the referee had to call the match. So, Rusev remains undefeated, but also Swagger looks strong despite losing. This SummerSlam was just great overall, with a lot of highlights like Ziggler winning a championship once again, a great lumberjack match, which I thought was the match of the night. Also, a cool-ass counter to the Superman Punch RKO, or Superman Punch into the RKO. Surprise title win for Paige. A great match between Rusev and Swagger, and quite possibly the most dominant championship victory, main event championship victory in history. So, yeah, as far as a rating for tonight's show, I would give it a solid 9 on 10. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, as always, can click that like button down below, and in the comments section, tell me which match you liked the most, what was your favorite match, your match of the night, and what rating would you give SummerSlam? So, with that said, I'm out, guys, see ya.